and welcome to C-Talk. Now, C-Talk is a monthly forum organized by the Center for Southeast Asian Social Studies, Universitas Gadjah Mada, led by our beloved Professor Hermin Indah Wahyuni. This series discuss historical, social, political, economic, cultures, technologies, and human rights issues around Southeast Asia. And in every episode, CTalk brings together academics from around the world who have or are currently conducting research in Southeast Asia. And currently, the Center for Southeast Asian Social Studies at UGM has just launched a book entitled Social Science in the Age of Transformation and Disruption. So this is the book. Make sure you get this book, very important publication of this year. Now, this book is edited by Professor Hermin Indah Wahyuni and also Dr. Vissia Yulianto. And this edited volume consists of works presented and discussed at the Symposium on Social Science conducted previously in 2018. And the seat talk today will be discussing one of the chapter in this book written by Miss Melanie Nertz and Dr. Vissia Yulianto, entitled Shifting Positionalities, the Shades of Being Inside and Outside of Social Science Research. Now, before we continue the discussion and listen to also to the comments from Dr. Mirjam Luecking, today we already have great discussion and also the authors of this chapter. But before we continue, we would like to hear some words from Professor Hermin Indah Wahyuni. So the time is yours, Professor.
Many thanks, Mas Rum, as the moderator, special moderator
Most
for this
welcome.
this afternoon. Very nice and always happy to have all of you in our C Talk, Southeast Asia Talks, and this still on the road to promote. Thank you also to promoting our book. Hopefully that what is that many can read the idea, the result of research that we presented in Southeast SOSS Symposium on Social Science 2018 at that time, and this afternoon or this evening or this morning, yeah, in Freiburg, we have very interesting topic, still continuing what Professor Judith Slayer we have in last week, discussing about a very interesting topic. And today we also have such kind of a problem that's very special in the research in social science. And I also invite here all of my students actually that have related with this very important topic for them that to write and to prepare their thesis and dissertation. And also special thanks for Professor Judith Slayer and also the speakers, very special. Also the editor, yeah, Dr. Vissia Yulianto, yeah, never tired to always prepare to promoting this book and this idea within it. And then also Miss Melanie that together with us in this publication. Thank you very much. And also very special our colleague from Hebrew University, Mbak Mirjam. That's also very special college for Center for Southeast Asia Social Studies. I think we really hope after this kind of activity there are so many ideas, there are so many fruitful discussion to help us to have a very wide perspective related with the perspective in social science, how to research in the maybe the with the background of different culture thing. I think that's from me, Mas Rum, and hope that all of us blessed in this Ramadan month and always happy, stay safe, always safe from COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Mas Rum. Please.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Hermin. Before we continue, I would like to remind for the participants, please do not forget to mute your audio, your speaker, I'm sorry, your mic, I'm sorry. Yeah, because we don't want to influence or distort the discussion. So meanwhile, you can unmute later when it comes to discussion session. Okay, now let me introduce the speakers for today's dialogue. We have Melanie, Miss Melanie V. Nertz, is a PhD candidate in the Department of Sociocultural Anthropology, University of Freiburg, and she holds a master's in Social and Cultural Anthropology and Islamic Studies. From 2009 until 2013, she joined the interdisciplinary research group Beyond Occidentalism, Concept of the West in Asia at the University of Freiburg as principal researchers for the associated research project, The Knowledge of the West in Contemporary Indonesia, Anthropological Research in Rural and Urban Spaces on Java and Sulawesi at the Institute of Cultural and Social Anthropology, University of Freiburg. Now, she has conducted prolonged research in Java and Sulawesi. So far, her interests have focused on academic culture and higher Islamic education, the variety of Islam, as well as Occidentalism in Indonesia. Publications include Muslim Modernities in Makassar and Yogyakarta, Negotiating the West and as a Frame of Reference. This is a book chapter in an edited volume by Volker Gottowik in 2014. Also, an article entitled Reimagining the West and Performing Indonesian Modernities, Muslims, Christians, and Paranormal Practitioners, co-authored with Professor Slia and Dr. Vissia Ita Yulianto. So great to have you here, Mbak Melanie. And I see you, I believe I see you a best friend of Mbak Ita, yeah, working along together for many times. Now, the second speaker, Mbak Ita, Dr. Vissia Ita Yulianto, is a sociocultural anthropologist. She is the author of Reframing Modernities in Contemporary Indonesia, Ethnographic Study of Ideas on Center and Periphery in Sulawesi and Java, published in 2015. She is a researcher at the Center for Southeast Asian Social Studies at UGM and lecturer at the Graduate Program of Performance and Visual Art Studies, UGM. Her latest publications include An Anthropology of Waste, Morality, and Social Mobilization in Java, co-authored with Professor Slia in 2020. Also, labor migration from Southeast Asia to Taiwan, issues, public responses, and future development, co-authored with Professor Hermin and Professor Deng in 2020. And another article, The Treachery on YouTube, The Politics of Memory on New Media in Indonesia, co-authored with Gilang Prahita, also in 2020. So we are confused how to stop Dr. Ita for publishing things, yeah, always publishing new things. Yeah, it's really good. Now, our discussion today, we are honored to have Dr. Mirjam Luecking, Mbak Mirjam, as the discussion. She is a postdoctoral fellow at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, first in affiliation with the Department of ASEAN Studies and the I-Core Center for Study of Conversion and Interreligious Encounters at Ben Gurion University of the Negev, 2017 until 2019, and currently as a member of the Martin Buber Society of Fellows in the Humanities and Social Sciences. Previously, Mbak Mirjam worked as a researcher and lecturer in the Department of Social and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Freiburg, Germany, where she completed her PhD. She studied and conducted anthropological research in Freiburg, Germany, Damascus, Syria, Fez, Morocco, and Madura, Samarinda, Jakarta, and Yogyakarta in Indonesia. Her work on labor migration, pilgrimage, and tourism, religious identities in Indonesia, and trans-regional connections between Indonesia and the Arab worlds has been published in international peer-reviewed journals, such as the European Journal of East Asian Studies, Social Science, and Dragon, and in her book, Indonesians and the Arab World Guided Mobility Among Labor Migrants and Mecca Pilgrims, published by Cornell University Press. Now, without further ado, let us be ready to hear intriguing research and stories by Mbak Melanie and also Dr. Vissia Yulianto. So this is a very interesting article, and when reading it, I reflect back to what I actually experienced as an mostly as an insider researcher, yeah, as a Javanese, having research in Java or in Jakarta. Sometimes I found it difficult. Sometimes I kind of envy with my international fellows that they sometimes they got this the skills actually to engage with the research participants. But I noticed that me myself sometimes I utilize an advantage of a little bit proficiency in Chromo Inggil. So sometimes when I went to rural areas, instead of using bahasa Indonesia, I use Chromo Inggil. Nyuwun ngapunten Pak Bu menika badhe nyuwun perso menawi Bapak Ibu. So something using the Chromo Inggil give me a kind of leverage or kind of advantage to do the research somehow in rural Java. But let us hear some of the examples and also the conceptualization of being inside and outside of a social science research from Mbak Melanie and Mbak Ita. Okay, so the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Masrum, and also for everyone for joining us this afternoon. We know that in social science, social scientists, including sociocultural anthropologists, sociologists, and the others cannot be totally objective in studying the knowing subject. And today, Melanie and I would like to share about our joint project, which recently published by the Center of Southeast Asian Studies. And we would like to entitle our today presentation. Do you see that on your screen already?
Yes. Yeah, it is clear in our screen.
Yes. Wait a minute. Entitled Shifting Positionalities, the Shades of Being Inside and Outside in Social Science Research. So the outline of the presentation is like this. We do the introduction and then positionalities, shades of insiderness and outsiderness, and also we'll share our fieldwork reflections and we will end up with the conclusions. So to give you the context of our joint project. Is it slideshow already? Not yet. Okay. Yes, now it's. To give you the context of our project, so we are working in tandem. It started in 2019 and end up in 2013 under the umbrella topic of Beyond Occidentalism, Images of the West in Indonesia. So despite different target groups and also theoretical frameworks, we, Melanie and I, shared common interests and research questions in how the research participants in Indonesia, in Java and Sulawesi perceive the West. I myself focused on the topic of reviewing modernities in Indonesia, comparing Sulawesi and Java. And Melanie focused on Muslim Indonesians, multiple perceptions of the West and negotiations of other and self in Java and Sulawesi. And here is our research sites. So we spent together for 3 months in Yogyakarta, and then we split. Melanie to Makassar, and I went to Manado. Manado is a predominantly Christian region. It is located in the northern tip of Sulawesi Island. It's very close to the Philippines. And Melanie went to Makassar, a predominantly Muslim region, with strong tendency for Islamization. Here, some images. You can see we are in Germany in 2009, and then this is the image of Manado, known as the city of 1,000 churches, because there are so many different kinds of churches in Manado. And also, maybe if we have time later, I can also compare my positionality in Taiwan. And this one is, Melanie, and with the research participants in Makassar, and this one in Java. Right. I would like to tell you about some key features of the tandem model. So here, Melanie is coming from Germany and I'm from Java, Indonesia. We have cultural difference. We also have regional difference as well. Okay, but cultural difference can, however, this cultural difference should not be a barrier in doing joint fieldwork. Okay, culture difference can be used in a productive way, quoting Prof. Slay, synergizing way, as people can learn from each other, and more perspectives always complete the picture. So the idea of applying tandem design here is to have a bigger picture of the topic under study, and also reciprocity and also equality. Within this, we can share our knowledge production. So in practice, Melanie and I conducted the fieldwork using a classical ethnographic method. So observation, participant observation, different kinds of interviews, different kinds of literature, or including gray literature together in the field, both in Gadjah, and also I visited some time in Makassar, and Melanie also visited me in Manado in 2010 or 2011, quite some time ago. And now I think, please, Melanie, you will continue with the issue of positionality.
Yes, thank you, Ita. So after the background information that Ita has given, some few general words on positionality and also the distinction between insider and outsider research to frame our fieldwork experiences and the reflections we did on our positionalities in the field that we want to share later on. Research positionality can be defined as the individual researcher's social standing in the fieldwork situation, and can also be characterized as an ongoing process of self-situating. So it refers to both to the way one positions him or herself in the field and how he or she is positioned by the research participants. And how the researcher is situated depends on many aspects, which in turn take then influence on data collection, on the interpretation thereof, and hence on knowledge production. So therefore it is crucial to have a very careful look on the individual role these single aspects take in order to detect biases on part of the researchers, for example, as well as to better understand the dynamics that there are between researcher and researcher participants. So the next slide, Ita, please. Such aspects are, for example, the professional background of the researcher, race or nationality, social class, personality takes on a role, language and communicative competence, age, life history as a whole, of course, religion, ethnicity, gender, also other aspects. And yeah, next slide, please. And so based what we experienced, we really agree with Narayan, who says we should view each anthropologist in terms of shifting identifications. Because due to this fluidity of identifications in the field, it is important to go beyond the well-known, let's say, dichotomy between insider and outsider research. So it should not be contrast as it puts emphasis on the cultural belonging and non-belonging of either the native or the non-native researcher, but you should be aware that there are different shades of being inside and outside when we remember these different aspects of positionality in the draft before. Anyway, the distinction is commonly made between this in and outsider perspective based on the cultural aspect, and then it's talked about assets and drawbacks of these two perspectives, such as the methodological authority of foreign researchers that's deemed favorable in contrast to native blindness then, or you think of the natives a priori cultural competence that is beneficial and contrasted with foreigners that might be prone to misunderstanding and error when they gather data and do analyze the data. But yeah, the important things we want to emphasize is that culture is one, but not the only way researchers may differ, and it is also one, but not the only factor that affects their positionality. That is what Ita and I learned, particularly also from the enhanced comparative perspective we took in the tandem. So we became not only aware of being cultural in or outsider, but also of being of having different shades of being inside or outsider, as you can see here, like Ita's being intimate insider or external insider, and was a Western outsider, or at times also unfamiliar or a familiar outsider. So we talked about this insiderness and not only inside. Yes. So far, the very general things about that, and Ita is going to dig deeper in the insiderness shades she experienced.
Okay, everyone. So as we just learned from Melanie, neither the researcher nor the research participants, or maybe in social science in general, we call it respondents, can be neutral, yeah, because we are always positioned culturally, historically, something like that, yeah. No one can be very objective. So that is why recognizing our positionality is useful, yeah, to demonstrate a more nuanced understanding of the power dynamics in the field. Now I would like to share the shades of insiderness, yeah, based on my own experience in conducting research in Java and also in Sulawesi. So I have many roles here. The first one is in intimate insider, or yeah, slightly different from insider, and also external insider and internal outsider in Taiwan and Germany. So the term insider, in fact, yeah, is used to describe projects where the researcher has a direct involvement or connections with the research setting. So the fact that I'm a Japanese, was born and raised in Java, attended school, work, and live here in Java, prove my insiderness, prove my insider status as a researcher in Jakarta and its surroundings. And as an insider, I have intimate knowledge of Java and the Japanese. And I also know the multiple realities of the Japanese. I had in-depth knowledge of many of the complex issues of the individual and the modes of interpersonal behavior in Java. My personal involvement always raises the possibility that my perspective may be subjective or maybe too subjective. So here, in fact, I find difficulties, or in a more positive way, I find more challenges in managing my dual or double role as insider or as investigator, as one is the investigator, and at the same time also the member of the society under researched. So here, my grassroots perspective can be a challenge, in a positive. It can be a challenge because there is a strong tendency that I take things for granted. I'm flooded with many materials. I know too much probably, so I cannot stay focused. That is the challenge for being an intimate insider or also insider at the same time. Okay, and then my positionality is a bit different when I conducted my research when I conducted fieldwork in Manado, in Sulawesi, in North Sulawesi. I went to Manado, to Minahasa and its surroundings. I didn't expect to be positioned. So positionality is the way we researchers position ourselves, as well as the way we are positioned by our research participants. And in Java, I'm positioned by my knowing subject as an intimate insider. In Manado, even though we have shared belief, we have shared cultural norms, I found out that I was positioned as a orang luar, as an outsider, as a foreigner even, because of my Javanese-ness. So in this case, even though we share the same nationality, we share the same some cultural norms, it doesn't guarantee that you or we researcher are positioned as one of as an insider researcher. But I'm in fact positioned as an external insider in Manado. I like this term very much. I found this term when from my empirical data in Manado, and maybe also in Taiwan and Germany, but maybe when we have time later, we can explore later more in the question and answer. I will now let Melanie to continue. Melanie. Oh, okay. This one is some images when I conducted the field work together with Prof. Deng, a tandem also with Professor Jan Bang Deng on Southeast Asian migrants in Taiwan 2 years ago. The paper also published already, and on your right side, this is those are Southeast Asian sailors who work in Taiwan. So those are from the Philippines, from Vietnam, from Indonesia as well. Okay, this one is my research positionality in Germany. The left side is when I did participant observation among the Sinti and Romani when they did gathering in summertime. And in the left side is when I conducted interview with the former Bürgermeister of Freiburg in 2017. All right, Melanie, please continue.
Thank you. So after Ita's experiences with insiderness, I would like to share my shades of outsiderness that, yeah, I could sense. Other than Ita, as a Westerner, or more precisely as a non-Muslim German anthropologist, I did not form part, obviously, of the setting and the people I was researching on. So I had the outsider status. I had some a priori knowledge about the cultural and social codes of conduct in Indonesia from previous stays in Indonesia, so I could have could have said to have a slight shade of being inside, but that's just a superficial one compared to native researchers, and the perspective I took then was still largely that of an outsider that is going to compare and relate what he sees to the notions of the self. So I was applying the methodological alterity, and this in turn is that you must not, however, result in ethnocentrism. So basically, it was important for me to be aware of my own implicit values, my conceptions, my Western academic education also, actually the lens through which I view the world. And sticking to such reflexivity was really made easier by the dialogical nature of the tandem that Ita and I approached, because within this tandem we could exchange our fieldwork experiences and also could talk about and exchange our interpretations thereof, so that you just get not only your lens you view the world with, but also the other the partner's perspective on it. Yeah, so that was the really the advantage of this tandem design. Yeah, apart from that, the outsiderness, yeah, the most significant factor when we just discuss my positionality was that of my Western origin and identity, and because and this was quite visibly marked by my physical appearance, of course, of being white, and for this appearance, I was always and everywhere recognized as Boulé, who what then comes up with a lot of symbols that people considered Boulé as a symbol of beauty, of course, due to this whiteness, but also as a symbol of wealth and cleverness on the one hand, and on the other hand, many also had in mind that the Westerner or the Boulé is a representative of Islamophobia. So what I sensed was that there was a quite ambivalent view on Westerners that was characterized by admiration on the one hand, but also distrust on the other hand. And concretely, this admiration went along with attracting attention almost everywhere, as I said. May that be in form of "Hello, mister, how are you?" shouts and being asked to take pictures with foreigners on the streets, or also in form of various invitations that I received, maybe probably to joining birthday parties, weddings, yeah, art exhibitions, student discussions forums, New Year's Eve celebrations, Eid al-Fitr celebrations, not far anymore. And yeah, it was prestigious to have a boy as guest. That's what I could detect. And thanks to this, but also to the Indonesian extraordinary hospitality, of course, the access to the field as a Westerner was, yeah, quite easy. And as I learned from Ita in this respect also, it was not me, the Westerner, who had this advantage making access to the field and meeting people more easily when you are associated with the West as a Indonesian researcher, it's sometimes yeah, easy as well. But for the time when the two of us together went for an interview in Manado, when I visited ITA, for example, there this imbalance came up because ITA had arranged an interview appointment in a Catholic priest seminary. And I really very well remember that scene when we got there to the entrance door and Ita asked for the interview partner. The people that were yeah, there at the gatekeeper's office were just so excited, giggling and staring at me that actually in the end the one who was reported to be waiting for an interview was just only me. And there was no talk of Ita standing there to have the interview. So that's quite fruitful to realize the roles we are given. But at the same time, to be honest, it was really also uncomfortable to see these imbalances and how you are perceived and what you are ascribed. Yeah, but fortunately, within the interview situation, this imbalance was really gone. So yeah, it was kind of yeah, all right. But at least, yeah, really, I think that was an example where it really became clear what standing and what high prestige Westerners is given at times. Yeah, it has already showed the slide. There's just some more impressions about being at the center of attraction. Yeah, so in the middle is right. That's me in a village in the surroundings of Makassar, and I mean you just walk there for 20 seconds and then everyone starts to gather around you. Yeah, and the other two on the left are where I joined or attended a class, a junior high school, and below these are students from the Muhammadiyah University in Makassar, where I gave English class as I was asked to do so. So it's also about expectations you raise as a Westerner, because they many assume to, of course, as a Westerner, you have to be clever, you have to be very skilled in English, in the English language. So it was really not rare to be asked to give or hold lessons in English. Yeah, and yeah, and on the left hand, on the right hand, we have still the advertisement for whitening cream or whitening soap, and above you see two girls that, yeah, actually took photos with the boulet, the Westerner advertisement in a mall in Makassar. Yeah, yes, you can the next slide. So yeah, however, getting in touch with people easily should not make one blind that the notion of Westerners and the West also contained negative aspects for my Muslim research participants. So I had to yeah, undermine distrust due to the preconceived image of Islamophobic Westerners. And yeah, maybe you can go 2 slides back, Ita, please. One more back.
One more back.
Yeah, just to have the Islamophobia. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I could yeah, undermine this distrust by frankly telling that I'm yeah, non-practicing Catholic actually, and that freed me somehow from suspicions that I'm a missionary, you could say. And what also helped was that I told that I'm having a master in Islamic sciences, because many saw this as proof then that I'm really interested in them and in their way of life. Yeah. Moreover, I had learned that it was crucial to give notice that I was ready to receive criticism as a Westerner, that I understood negative feelings about the West. And I did so. I consciously positioned myself in interviews and talks that they could realize I'm fine with hearing negative ideas about the West. Because where I did not, it happened that people were shy to frankly tell the negative perceptions, and they often firstly addressed positive ideas about the West or overemphasized the positive ones. And that was a tendency that I also could detect, not only but also due to the tandem model, because here we had the chance to directly compare the separate interview results from Ita and me. So this tendency to start with the positive first concerning the West was really a peculiarity when I was talking to people. Yeah, so we can now have the next slide on outsiderness. One more, please. Thank you. Yeah, however, not only my Westerners took influence on the positionality, because the sample of Muslim Indonesian research participants was really multivocal. The factors that were relevant for the research participant dynamics were fluctuating. To frame it, the sample was really multiple, because I inserted there people that had direct contact with Westerners and those who had not, people from all walks of life, from different levels of education, from several Islamic denominations and groups. So there were people from NU, from Muhammadiyah, from PKS parties, from Wahda Islamiyah, there were students, lecturers, there were lawyers. So there was quite a wide range, and of course, in every new researcher participant relationship, there was a new constellation you had to be aware of and had to think about. So religion played a role, as already mentioned, in relation with the topic of Islamophobia. Education played a role, as it created familiarity among research participants from academia, for example, but distance among less educated lower class Indonesians. So in the first evening, when I visited a mountain village in South Sulawesi, I participated there in a community gathering, and I chatted with the villagers and introduced myself. And in doing so, I soon was passed over to the teacher of the local high school, because as a peasant then stated to me, the teacher would know better what I want to know and what I was researching, because he had studied in town. So there was really quite an obvious relation, how they positioned me and how they perceived me, and where distances appeared. Gender played a role, of course. For example, when I contacted Islamic parties as the PKS in Yogyakarta and Wahda Islamiyah, for example, in Makassar, because both times getting in touch with female with male was not possible. It was only that I could talk and meet with female members of these parties or these Islamic group. And finally, language or communicative competence was an aspect that showed me again that actually there might be a discrepancy between being positioned and positioning oneself, because while I always was aware of my limits concerning my Bahasa Indonesia and my sometimes also Western style of posing questions, and thanks to the tandem, I could learn from Ita a lot how to more in chatting rather than formal interviewing. While I was really aware of these limits, the research participants sensed more my ability to speak Indonesian and considered it as trust building rather regardless of any imperfections. To illustrate that more, in Makassar, I went to a memorial for victims of Dutch colonialism one time, and tried to get in contact with the man that took care of this complex. And at first, I just failed because he had made bad experiences with a domestic journalist who had interviewed him and secretly recorded him. And finally, it all ended up with a publication in newspaper he was not comfortable with. So there was much distrust. But when I then started again, or explaining him that I, as a researcher, condemn these kind of secret research and undercover research, that I was here for several months now, and then I started to just chat with him about my experiences in Makassar, and so we got in everyday conversation, and then all of a sudden he came up and directly agreed to become my research participant, and that he would be pleased to share his knowledge. So it was this kind of you had to build up trust first, and this came really with chatting and being communicative in a language he feels comfortable with, I think. Yeah, so the next slide, Ita, please. Yeah, that's just some impressions again about.
Excuse Melanie,
yes.
there is a request for you to up the voice a little bit.
Oh yes, I'm right already.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, try harder. Yeah. So this is another slide with impressions, how we did interviews, how the setting was. So you see above, you see Ita and me really in Islamic attire, and there again we had the impression we should wear these jilbabs, but finally we found out afterwards that the students from the university, from the state university in Yogyakarta, wouldn't have expected us to come like that. So it's again a kind of, you have to sense what is appropriate, and that can go wrong as well, although it was nothing that meant a hindrance to our interview. Then below on the right side, the colleagues from UGM, where we had Ita is also on the picture, and where we had fruitful discussions about research among colleagues. And on the left, there's a picture showing me with a pot seller in Yogyakarta. And there again, it's the aspect of language, because here it's the other way around. Here I had to realize my limits, because he was only familiar with talking in Japanese, and that's what then of course Ita could do easily. And so we had these fruitful combination and again of the tandem. So the next slide. To make just some concluding remarks, research positionality is multifaceted, dynamic, and constantly renegotiated. And Western identity is actually one decisive factor. I mean that was true for Yogyakarta and Makassar, and I would say this to be associated with the West was a particular factor in Manado. Insiderness and outsiderness should, in our opinion, be considered as gradual and contextual states. And last but not least, we want to emphasize that juxtaposing, not opposing insider and outsider perspectives is what can enhance the quality of research. The tandem approach that Ita and I applied made it much easier to visualize chances and challenges of both perspectives. And I would say they vividly triggered the reflexivity you need to get an idea about your researcher position. I think it's natural that you in team you have to arrange things and to invest more time, but it's really fruitful time, and you end up with better informed research, doubtlessly. Another point I think that is very interesting and beneficial of this tandem approach is that when you think of this legacy of anthropologists that did so many so long time a one-sided research coming from the global south to the global north, I think a tandem or also team research is the right design to start engaging in more equal and equal research and equal knowledge protection. So yeah, I think that's so far from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. And I would like to add one thing. So we should highlight in the issue of doing research and alternative production positionality is of prime importance in social science research. Why? Because it plays a crucial role in the process of obtaining data, and in large measure determines the eventual success of the quality of data and also its analysis, hence the production of knowledge. Thank you, Melanie, and also Masrum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shon, for Mbak Ita and Mbak Melanie. Such a very intriguing paper, and it's also very contributive. You guys introduced the shades of what being insiders and outsiders. We cannot see it as monochromatic things, but rather there is some layers into it, and we should see positionality as a multifaceted aspects in research. And now we would like to invite our special discussion for today is Dr. Mirjam Luecking. Mbak Mirjam, yeah, thank you very much for being here. And Mbak Mirjam has a vast experience of doing research in Indonesia. Some of her famous works also beyond Islam Nusantara, also Indonesian pilgrimage to Jerusalem, very popular. And also actually she also write us one article on research relationship, yeah, about imbalances in research relationships. So we would like to learn more from Mbak Mirjam's conceptualization on being insiders and outsiders in social science research. Okay, so time is yours. I think for like about 20 minutes. Yeah, thank you. 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih banyak, Masrum. Thank you very much. If I do speak too long, please stop me. Yeah, but first of all, thank you to Melanie and Ita. I really enjoyed reading your paper and also hearing your presentation now. And it was very thought-provoking for research methodology and for positionality in social sciences research. But I also learned a lot about your research topic again, about perceptions of the West in Indonesia. And the fact that I learned something about your research topic also shows that a conscious reflection about positionality contributes to the research results, to the research findings. So I think that's one of the most important points that I took from your chapter. And now let me share my screen. How do I do this here? And full screen. Yeah.
Yes.
So you can see it, right?
Yeah. We can see
Okay,
it.
great. Yeah. So yeah, so overall, I've really found your paper very accessible, very also accessible for students, inspiring further thoughts. There were a lot of things that are maybe particular for Indonesia and for your research topic about perceptions of the West. But there were also a lot of general things that I could relate to and that I could connect to research in other regions, even beyond Southeast Asia. So I think that's really a very useful chapter that you wrote. Some of what I found very important is that you stressed the nuances, the shades, as you call it, and also the shifting hints at the fluidity of the concept, that it is not something static, but that it can change over time and in different constellations with different research participants and research partners. So the shifting, the movement of positionalities, and also the shades, that there are many, many nuances. And I just listed here some of the categories that you used in your chapter. But of course, I think there could be many more categories. And the important awareness of intersectionality, that you mentioned different factors that impact positionality, and that can also be intertwined. So I think that's something really important. You said that culture or also nationality is by far not the only aspect that shapes positionality. Another key result of your discussion. And I just wanted to mention some of the categories that I find interesting and that we might sometimes forget about. For example, the going native. When someone has been living for a long time in the research area and really became maybe a member of the community and feels at home in the research area, then when going back to the so-called home, let's say, one could also have this outsider's feeling or outsider's perspective. When one returns to one's own country, one's own city or village of origin. And this creates very hybrid identities and positionalities. And as I said, they can change over time. And for the two of you, what I found really interesting is the cosmopolitan positionalities that you mentioned in your examples. Ita, for example, being an Indonesian researcher who's based in Germany. So this has a very cosmopolitan element in your positionality, where even in Indonesia, where you are an Indonesian citizen, you might be associated with someone from outside. As you said also, especially in your research in Sulawesi, that you are like orang luar, something from outside. Whereas Melanie is also really knowledgeable about Islam and speaks Arabic, studied in Arab countries. So you said that this was something that you would not, for strategic matters, would not bring up so much with your research participants. But I assume that this could also make you someone who is seen as you say, as being in between, as not only being this clear-cut Westerner. And I think the category of a Westerner was interesting for your research theme, but then again, you are also a cosmopolitan personality that is very knowledgeable about the Muslim world beyond Indonesia. In your paper, you mostly talked about positionality in the field, how it matters for access to the field, to gain trust of research participants, and also how we gain research results from it when we reflect about positionality. I want to say a few words about that, but I also want to lead the discussion a bit further and think or ask if positionality also matters at the desk and in the writing process, especially because you also wrote this paper in tandem. So going back to the origin of the idea of the tandem and team research cooperation, I think all of us agree that the Freiburg-Yogyakarta and also Freiburg-Yogyakarta-Makassar cooperation has been extremely fruitful, and that the different positionalities can also be fun. So I always like this picture of two of our students who participated in the program, where the local insider would take his Indonesian partner around town to give her this city tour, which I think it's also something that we might forget, that we talk about positionality in a kind of problematic way, but it can also be really fun to show someone else your city and to be an outsider and to have this fresh view from outside, which can also, again, trigger the curiosity of the insider. And this is what happened for many of the students who participated in the program, that the outsider's view really triggers curiosity, even for the inside partner. It creates a sensitivity for details, which insiders often overlook, as you said. Reversing the gaze can also lead to very surprising conclusions. Just to give an example of this, we had one student doing a research on veganism and vegetarianism with her German partner. And I remember that in one of the workshops, when we were talking about the data analysis, she said, veganism and vegetarianism in Freiburg is like a religion. And we had a very heated discussion about this in the workshop, where the students disagreed very much of what is the definition of religion and what makes a religion, and can we really say this, that vegetarianism is a religion? So also this sometimes conflictive juxtaposition of different views can be very fruitful to reflect about our own analysis. And another example that I like very much is the example of our colleague Ingo, who did a research about punk in Indonesia, also in Argentina, and who's himself a member of this subculture. So for him, the punk scene in Indonesia was also something familiar because he's himself a punk. But for his Indonesian research participant, it was something foreign in her own society. So it's not only a juxtaposition of different views, but also a combination of different views and also different skills, where maybe the one has the language skills and the other one has the inside subcultural knowledge about the internal codes and everything. So positionality, as you said in your paper, in your chapter, is something that we position ourselves, maybe sometimes also in a strategic way, when we want to trigger some reactions, when we want to trigger a reaction to how do people react to me as a non-Muslim, as a white person maybe, but also it is also something that is ascribed. So I found it important that you reflect on this two-sidedness of how positionality comes into existence, let's say. And then you talked about positionality affecting the data collection, and also, as we said, contributing to insights. But I wanted to suggest or to ask that the positionality, also the ascribed positionality, also affects the researcher. It can also affect the researcher in an emotional way. Maybe if you like, you can tell us a bit more about that. You said it was challenging to in terms of getting access to the field, but how did it make you feel? How did it make you feel when people would reject you, or when people would adopt you as being one of theirs, let's say? In the authors that you quote talk about positionality being strategically constructed, but then also being part of personality. So I think here it's really important, as you also mentioned in your chapter, to bear in mind that it's always a combination of different things, and that of course positionality is not always something strategic or conscious. It can be very like momentary, momentarial, that it comes from the moment and that it's not, as I said, static or fixed. And also that when the positionality or what people ascribe to us, when it affects us in an emotional way, this also affects the analysis and the writing process. And I just wanted to draw your attention to another publication edited by Thomas Stodulka, Samia Dinkelaka, and Ferjan Satayeb from the Humboldt, the Freie University in Berlin, who did a research project on emotions in the field. And they were asking quite similar questions as you ask about positionality and the role that we have in the field, but they were in the end relating it more to the emotions that it creates. And I was one of the participants in this research. So I was actually interviewed by Thomas and his colleagues, and I was asked to do a research, an emotion diary. So not only a fieldwork diary where we note information and have protocols of meetings and interviews, but to write a diary about the emotions in the field. And one of the questions that came up in the interviews and also in this emotion diary was also, as you were asking, related to positionality. Who are you in the field and how does it make you feel? So if I'm considered a woman, how does it make me feel? How do I feel towards other women? If I'm considered an outsider, a Christian and a spy, how does that make me feel? And from my current research in Palestine and Israel, it is sometimes really hard because of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, there is a lot of mistrust on all sides. And then when someone comes and says, I'm doing research, then people say, who are you? Are you working for the Secret Service? Why do you have a Jewish name, but you have a German, you say that you are German? So there is a lot of suspicion, and it's sometimes very hard, and sometimes can be frustrating, can be maybe even to the point that it's hurting oneself when one is seen as an intruder or a spy. But then on the other hand, it can also be very challenging to be seen as an ally. So this is another photo from my current research where I accompany a Christian pilgrimage group on the Via Dolorosa, and where people perceive me as a Christian, and then they would ask me to give testimonies about my Christian experience, which you see that I took the microphone and that I attempt to say something, but obviously I'm very reluctant to do that. So the project of Stodulka and his colleagues was asking about these positionalities in terms of how does it make you feel, and skipping this for time reasons. So I think for me, like, this is a list of some of the emotions that came up when I participated in this evaluation project. And like, the emotions can influence the everyday research activities, but they can also influence the writing process. And for me, it was especially feelings of guilt and indebtedness, also in my research in Indonesia, that I felt I'm taking people's time, I'm maybe even taking people's material resources when they host me, even though maybe they don't have so many resources. How does it influence the positionality and the research relationship when I offer to contribute money or food to the household that is hosting me? And in my current research, how does it influence the research relationship if the travel agencies offer money to me? Because I'm researching on tourism, and then sometimes I accompany the groups. Sometimes there is no Indonesian speaking guide. I would do a translation, and then I'm being offered money. Can I take this money, or does it influence the research positionality and the relationship too much? About the topic of imbalances, I also wanted to draw your attention to one of the chapters in this book by Stodulka et al. By Mechthild von Baccano, who says that there should also be an ethics of economic participation in our research area, especially when we research with people who have less material or financial resources. But for me, the imbalances and the feeling of guilt that resulted from imbalances was not only economic or financial, it was also about empathy, about time, about interest, and about power relations. And to give an example of this imbalance in empathy, I felt that I'm actually, as a researcher, very, very empathetic, whereas my research partners might not be. And this is just the beginning of the introduction from the chapter that I contributed to this edited volume. And it starts with a scene where a Kiai in Madura said, "It's said that a nice person like you will burn in hell." And I relate very much to what Melanie said about being perceived as a Westerner, being maybe perceived as someone who comes from the Islamophobic West, but then at the same time it's ambivalent, because I'm a nice person, I'm a beautiful, nice young person, but it's so sad that I will not be well saved. And there were a lot of missionary attempts in my research in Madura especially, but in emotional terms, which was now the focus of this research project of Stodulka, it made me feel bad to be perceived as an outsider to the extent that people tell me you will burn in hell. And I was very unhappy about this. And to some extent, I had a grudge against people who would say that. And I took this grudge to the desk and to the writing process. And I was struggling with it when I was going back to the interview recordings and to my results. And I remember that writing up my PhD, I sometimes had a hard time. And then I went back to my research partners, to my research assistants and partners, and I talked about it with them. And then I received a very nice email reply by one of them, Ubed, whom you see here in the picture. This is Ubed. So I translated this from Bahasa Indonesia. Ubed says about this specific part of the article, he says, I found it funny to read this. It represents a funny and ironic reflection about your research participants. I remember the interview with the old Kiai who spoke harshly and urged you to become Muslim. Didn't this incident become a trigger for our discussion about the interreligious tolerance or intolerance of Madurese people? About these provocative efforts to missionize, from the softest to the more straightforward ones. I only keep them as comical stories. I remember an anecdote that reflects the exorbitance of Orthodox NU people in Madura, which says, my child, you have to marry a fellow Muslim. But if you can't, then go and marry an adherent of Muhammadiyah. So for me, I really took the positionality and the emotions that were created by the positionality to the desk, where it created some grudge and was a challenge for the research data analysis to see it only as a surplus of the data analysis. But then the tandem model or the cooperative research proved to be very useful, not only in the field, but also afterwards in the data analysis, when my research partner helped me to broaden my horizon and to understand that you are not the only outsider here. For NU people in Madura, you might be as much as an outsider like people from Muhammadiyah. And then already it helped me to cope with these emotional struggles, but it also contributed to my understanding of Madurese society and to my research results. So I would say that just as some questions that I had when reading your paper is if we can speak about positionality from the field to the desk, if positionality also matters back at the desk when we hold a grudge, when we are excited, when we have a specific sympathy, and how we deal with that. Also, if we stay in touch with our research participants, if they maybe expect us to fulfill expectations, and how maybe like fulfilling expectations in this regard would also be that I write in favor of Islam, or that I would prove the Islamophobic image in the West, that I proved this image wrong, which was an expectation that research participants often expressed. But then I also have to fulfill standards of Western academia. So I was wondering how you were dealing with this positionality at the desk, especially writing articles or writing this particular article in tandem. And it made me wonder if there is maybe also something like a social sciences positionality in interdisciplinary encounters in our scholarly culture, where we as anthropologists speak a certain language, we have certain codes, and we might be weird to others in an interdisciplinary setting. So I thought further about positionality in academic institutions and also in the countries of employment. Who am I in the country of employment? I'm a student, I'm a researcher, maybe I'm in a precarious employment relationship, maybe I have a limited contract, or maybe not, maybe I'm a civil servant, maybe I'm a professor. Maybe I'm a citizen of that country, or I'm a foreign resident, I guess, as you were, Ita, when you did your PhD in Freiburg. Maybe I'm a migrant. And maybe I'm also a political person, an activist, an opponent, a supporter or collaborator of something. I know that now a lot of people who do research in the People's Republic of China receive threatening emails, and in this case their positionality as an academic, as a researcher, but also as an activist or an opponent to the Chinese regime puts them in a certain position also when they are away from the field. So it's very difficult to understand what are the borders of the field. And maybe we take the field to the desk, and maybe the field continues beyond the immediate research period. So also when we think about the book as being a book about social sciences in Southeast Asia, I think we also need to see this in a globalized world, in the international connections of Southeast Asian research. So I think that what you have in the title, this phrase of the shades of being inside and outside, also apply to the positionality at the desk and at our academic institutions. And I allowed myself to play a bit with some of the statements that you make in your chapter. For example, you say, I had in-depth knowledge of many of the complex issues of the individual and the modes of interpersonal behavior. Ita, you were talking about Java, but I could also say in Freiburg for myself, when I did my PhD in Freiburg, I had a lot of in-depth knowledge about how the university works, how the city works, and maybe you did not. So I would be interested in hearing, how was it for you to do a PhD as a foreigner in Germany, and what was the positionality during the writing process or as a foreign member of the department? And then also another hypothetical sentence, I did not have an understanding of the unwritten emotional and cultural significance of the process of doing a PhD. So again, I'm speaking from my own perspective. I come from a family that does not have an academic background, and I'm maybe the first person in my family that studies at a university, and think my parents would never thought that I do a PhD or that it's even useful to do a PhD. And I did not really know, what is the, what does it entail to do a PhD, and what are the struggles and what are the emotional burdens maybe of doing a PhD. Another quote from your chapter, with this knowledge, I gained ready access and subsequently established deeper engagement with the university administration, students and department members. So I was thinking that maybe Melanie, as someone coming from the region, even close to Freiburg, and having a knowledge about how administration works in Germany and in the university, maybe you were someone who gained access and established deeper engagement in university administration and with students and other department members. So I would be curious to hear from you, Melanie, if you would say that you had an insider positionality during the writing process and being back home at the desk, and or maybe if you had an outsider positionality after coming back from the field. And the two last quotes, something extremely eye-catching was my physical experience, my different physical appearance. It was sorry, maybe I have a typo here. It was in all of the times visible marker of my foreignness in Germany. So I was now thinking of, again, maybe Ita, of you as an Asian person in Germany, also in your other research projects in Germany, but I also thought of, let's say, our colleague Primoz, who is Black, and how does physical appearance matter for people who study at academic institutions abroad, or maybe also people of a different physical appearance in Indonesia? Because in your research example of the West, we learned that Westernness and whiteness is something beautiful, but how about black skin, or how about Chineseness? How about being a Taiwanese researcher in Indonesia? And the last one, as a non-native speaker, I hence was always aware of my limits and sensed my outsiderness. And I added in Israel-Palestine. So that's something that I'm experiencing at the moment, that even though we might expect that in academia everything is in English, and I have some command of the Hebrew and Arabic languages, it still happens a lot that people think that I'm retarded or stupid because I do not know the language fully. So even in a conference at the Hebrew University, there could be a coffee break where I do not catch up in the conversations in Hebrew, and where I'm often an outsider, even in the academic environment. And of course, this contributes to my positionality in my academic, what is currently my academic home. So to summarize these thoughts for further discussion, I think what we really learned from your chapter is that positionalities create research results. And a conscious reflection, like this is kind of the takeaway, a conscious reflection about the positionality enriches the research results, or as you said, the quality and equality. It's both an ethical matter and also a content-related matter. The reflexive shifting of positionalities informs the reflexive data analysis and also reflexive writing. So I think the reflection process should continue at the desk. And research corporations can be extremely helpful in order to recognize our positionality, juxtapose and compare it with other positionalities, and combine different views. But I think that the positionality also affects the research in emotional terms, and it affects the researcher. This lastly also affects the personality, and making all of this a very fluid or shifting experience, as you put it in your chapter. Yeah, and last but not least, which is here the first point, I would say that positionality matters not only in the field, but also at academic institutions. And this is just a question of further thought. I would be very interested in hearing your opinion about this. So with this, I finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih for Mbak Mirjam. I think there are many interesting insights, including research as an intellectual but also emotional journey as well. And the reflections will also goes to the desk, and tandem might also the tandem process in writing and in analyzing the research, the study will also incorporate emotional dialogue between those two researchers coming from different backgrounds. All right, so now we still have 33 minutes, I think. We still have many time, considerable amount of time. Yeah, so don't worry. Now I would like to ask whether Mbak Ita and Mbak Melanie has something to say to respond to Mbak Mirjam.
Melanie, if you want to go first, go ahead.
All right, so yeah, please.
Okay, so I start probably with what I remember of your very interesting and inspiring questions. I mean,
I'm sorry, maybe the volume of Mbak Melanie is a little bit low, the volume. Yeah, okay, so thank you very much. Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, when I think of this emotional aspect of in research, of course, that this is something that does influence positionality as well, and of course data collection. And I remember I also, when I took my field notes, I also had inserted always how I was feeling, and I remember that when I was several months in Indonesia, and I was quite well known in the surrounding I live with the coast, and where I every day went along the streets. I once was really like stressed and kind of upset as well, as always the people were shouting, "Hello, mister, how are you?" Because it was obvious I'm every day there, but I remained the outsider even after 5-6 months there. So yeah, of course, sometimes this how you are positioned, although you might have over time felt more inside now, others still perceived you as the outsider. So that does something to you, and sometimes you're stressed with all this attention, of course, that you receive. That's something you must be aware as well, and that comes up again when you are writing. And I remember when I had the look on my field diary notes, I could remember how exhausted I sometimes was with all this attention, and then you have to have to keep it in mind. What data did you collect with under which emotional circumstances then. So that's quite an aspect you should not forget when it comes to positionality. And then probably at the desk back, I think the tandem was again really supportive to not forget about these multiple perspectives that you can have on a data set. I mean, we had so many times that we read each other's texts and then put comments on it and started discussing about what categories could we use. Is that a proper category, or is it too dense? Is it too wide? What would Indonesians think when they hear these category? Comes there the same to the mind as when I do that as a Western educated academic? And these all comes up. You're straightly confronted if you work in team and in tandem, and can only be supportive to get your writing more reflexive, actually. So maybe Ita, you go ahead.
Thank you, Melanie. First of all, I would like to thank Mirjam for having a close reading to our chapter and for being a wonderful discussion this time. Thank you so much, Dankeschön, Mirjam. Yes, I definitely agree with you that, individual or each of us, each researcher has no single status, but we have a set of statuses, and that our identities are always cross-cut by other differences. And there are layers that we should be, our social skill, our language competence, there are many layers that we should be adaptive in the field. And yes, again, no doubt, I agree with you that positionality also matters on the desk. And when we come to data analysis, data interpretations, from the data, from our findings, I think it is always affected by our certain interests, by our certain, maybe we have hidden political sympathies, personal histories, loyalties, monetary interest, and also other ulterior agendas. It definitely affects at the end of the day, it affects the knowledge production. And thank you for bringing to the fore about these emotional dimensions of both data gathering on the field as well as data analysis on the desk. Yes, back to 2010 and early 2011, I was in Manado, and I was also frustrated because on the first week, especially on the first week, I didn't get significant data. I didn't get what I looked for on the field, because people see me as orang luar, as an outsider, as a Japanese, Muslim, something like that. And it was really frustrating, of course, for 2 weeks having nothing, quote unquote. But there is also the importance of having local partner. So I have, maybe Nono is there also, join us at this time. I thank him so much. He's very wonderful, a door opener. And he told me that, Mbak Ita, you should tell your participants, research participants, that you are a PhD student from Germany, which I did not do that for my fieldwork in Java. I didn't mention my my academic background, because it is considered as, you know, as it shows the hierarchy between the researcher and the researched. Yeah. So that's why we should be sensitive in terms of the cultural norms in our knowing subjects. I didn't believe him at the first sight, but because yeah, I end up with nothing important findings. So yeah, I took his suggestions, and suddenly I was invited by so many families, so many participants, you know, for dinner, for talk, for presentations, something like that. So this key, their what is it? Their connection with the West is important key for being, you know, considered or recognized as what is it? Shared identity or something like that. Yeah. Itu pengalaman saya di Manado. But I really miss Manado so much. I still engage with some of my research participants in Manado or in Unsra.
Yeah.
That's it, Mirjam. Maybe.
Yes.
Mushroom.
Yep.
To have more
Okay.
opportunities for our participants to ask.
Yeah, I think they should. So I would like to ask your times actually, Mbak Ita, Mbak Melanie, and Mbak Mirjam, to spare sometimes. Maybe we will invite some questionnaires, some inquirers. So we would like to cordially invite the participants to ask directly. You can unmute your mic or raise your hand so we can notice you and allow you to ask a question. While waiting for the participants to directly ask you, uh, there are some questions from the chat box. The first question comes from Mbak Dewi KS. Mbak Dewi KS. Hi. So if you would let me to read it for you. Hi, my name is Dewi KS. I have a question. It was mentioned earlier that we cannot be value free. So to what extent do insider and outsider bias affect the research data? To what extent is this quote unquote permitted? That is the first question. So another question comes from Mas Philippus Andika. So if you would let me to read. Hi, my name is Philippus Andika W. And I would also like to ask a question. How would you as a researcher deal with a quote unquote hostile subject during your field research? Example given when Mbak Mirjam interviewed the Maduris Kiai. That is the second question. And there will be a question from Professor Judith Schlier. Okay, so Professor Schlier, time is yours.
Thank you. But the other questions come first. So from my side, something in between a question and a comment, because first of all, thank you very much for these presentations and for Mirjam's input, which points to an aspect that we are just now experimenting with. And this is not only the writing up or the question how to publish and write together, but also how to evaluate data together. And now, as we were all forced to transfer our teamwork to the digital formats, we organized several, Ingo and Sita Hidayah organized several seminars where we brought our students together and asked them to share their data, their fieldwork data. And yeah, to be very brief now, I must say they are very reluctant in doing this. So both in Indonesia and now in Argentina, where we collaborate with now, the students are not that enthusiastic to do joint data evaluation. So that brings me to my question, maybe not only to Ita and Melanie, maybe also to the audience. How do you think that we can make use of the digital media like today's meeting in future in order to improve our tandem model, not only doing fieldwork together, not only writing together, but also evaluating data and sharing data? That's my question.
Thank you very much, Professor Sleo, for the question. A question for us to reflect together. Later, Mbak Ita, Mbak Melanie, and Mbak Mirjam will answer this question as well. Now, we go to the first question, Mbak Dewi KS, about value-free things and also bias, and to what extent is this permitted, Mbak Melanie, Mbak Ita, and Mbak Mirjam. You are still muted, Mbak Ita.
Thank you, Masrum, and also Mbak Dewi. Maybe I can go first. So it is mentioned earlier that we cannot be value-free. Yeah? So to what extent do insider and outsider bias affect the research data? I'll take an example from our own experience. So Melanie and I, although we work together under the umbrella topic of Beyond Occidentalism, Images of the West, Indonesia, we have different focus. And I'm interested more in the issue of postcoloniality, and that is why my conceptual framework to analyze the data and the data that we found from the field is framed by the theories of alternative modernities, plural modernities. So I also refer to the classical concepts of modernity, so looking at modernity in a linear basis. But I also want to voice out something that is also peculiar findings from my fieldwork. So not only that, I mean, in this case, my political agenda can be very effective. It affects the way I see the data, or I gather the data, and also my interpretations and data analysis. However, it didn't come from an assumption though. So this is hardly based on the research finding from the field. And to what extent is this permitted? I think we cannot be, as I said, our identities are multiple, our statuses are also multiple, and it is just fine. And no one can be objective in doing research in social science. And we always have our own focus and interest, and also what do we want to voice out at the end of the day for the knowledge production. I think this is just completely all right. As long as we have strong basis, grounded basis, I think it is completely all right for knowledge production. And to continue with Professor Slay's question, yes, I think this is very challenging to have this digital context for data gathering. Before of course, I take very much benefit for this tandem model. And then I also applied multi-sited ethnography when I conducted research in Germany about the Holocaust forgotten victim in 2017. So I did research not only in Freiburg, but also in Berlin, and also I followed my fieldwork in Poland, for example, to have a bigger data. And then it can be also combined with the data that we may gain from this online situation, from this digital scene. And in this book, I didn't design that I applied hybrid data gathering. Apart from these classical methods of ethnographic classical method, I also applied online interview at that time already in 2010. It came from a frustration, Mirjam. So I found out that there is a missing gap. Okay, when I come back to Germany, I found that this aspect has not been explored. I need more data. That is why I contact my research participants through Facebook, and I did online interview with them already in 2010, in early 2011. And I found it very useful. For sharing data, for data sharing, I mean, with Melanie, this is, as we are tandem, and with Prof. Slay as well, we work together until today. Thank you so much for our cooperations. We share data. It's very openly, and I think, I mean, data ownership is not. I mean, as long as we are doing together, data ownership belongs to the researchers. So it is no problem at all. I'm happy to share the data. Because sometimes we are, as an insider, I'm flooded with materials, and it makes me, cannot focus to a certain issue. So it is relieving also. The feeling is also relieving to share other data or the same data with our research partner. That is from me, Masrum.
Thank you very much, Mbak Ita. Maybe Mbak Melanie. I also want to remind you about the other question from us related to hostile response, yeah, from research participant. How would you deal with that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm take up the line of Ita first concerning this sharing of data. Of course, in the tandem, we had this, this advantage to have time to have a trust building and getting to know each other and working very dense together. So their data sharing is not at all any question, and we could trust each other, and we were so familiar with each other that never came up for us in the tandem. Of course, in pandemic times and over distance, that when we are now forced to do research without getting to know each other, I can imagine that trust building is actually might be some problem or pose some problems, because probably in my view, it's not only about can I trust the researcher on the other side, but also how to deal, how to operate that data sharing over the World Wide Web, keeping the anonymity and keeping the data safe, so that it's not just out there somewhere in the internet. I mean, security of the data would be an issue that I would think of as well when we come to data sharing online. So so this is an aspect. We would think of databases to bring up, probably, to make that easier, because of course I think that it's not about only collecting data together, but evaluating it together can bring much benefit as well. As I said, Ita and me didn't that very extensive, but only discussing what categories you can apply, you really get input and you are inspired with having other perspectives in. So far to the data. This hostile topic. Unfortunately, I must say, didn't really had the chance to really react to such hostile reactions from my research participants, because when I went to Wahda Islamia, it was like, yeah, just stop at the door and yeah, you can hand in a letter, of course, and ask for a interview or getting in touch. So there was such a clear rejection that access was also really not at all possible at the when I was once trying to get in there. But I mean, it's one time it works like this, the other time you get access, because later on some female members of Wahda Islamia were very willing to have contact with me and explain their way of life and their perception. So I mean, that it depends on the individual as well. So it's more that you probably just have to remind yourself not to be too frustrated and too long upset with such frustrating situations. But I think later on Mirjam can really go deeper in this, what she has quoted, what she has written in her article, because that would be really interesting to hear how you could have how you have reacted to such comments from your research participants. What else did we have? Yes, about the bias as insider or outsider. I mean, from my view, you cannot say that there is any scale what is permitted or not to have a bias. Everyone is to some degrees and to some with regard to some aspects subjective, and you cannot discuss you cannot reject that. So I would suggest it's better to be really honest and transparent about this condition of doing research, and you not only to your audience, to those who read later on your publications, but to yourself. When you are writing, when you are going through your data, you have to remind yourself and ask constantly, what presumptions do I have in mind? What did I have in mind when I was in the field? And think about it, and search for comment as much as possible from colleagues, or also maybe you can readdress your research participants if you go through data and you think, oh well, that would be probably not with every research participant that comes up with, but maybe the level of education then makes sense to think about. But students I have interviewed easily gave some kind of additional comment when I asked after I had read some recorded interviews. So I think that makes sense as well to prevent too much influence of personal biases. So far from my side, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mbak Melanie. Now, Mbak Mirjam, questions from Professor Slia about collaborations through digital platforms. And also, I think it is very related to Professor Slia's question from Mas Hilmi. Do you think that positionalities may differ or might be similar in ethnography, or virtual ethnography, in contrast to usual fieldwork? Also, does researchers' background like gender, language, race, etc. in virtual ethnography have impact just as much as usual fieldwork? And also about the bias, to what extent it is permitted, and also from Mas Philippus about the hostile subject that you have told us. So how did you respond to this response from your research participants? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to be brief. First of all, about the hostility. So I think the most important advice that I got on this topic was actually from Judith Schlee, who said that you should not take it personal. Think about what you learn from it. And this was very helpful for me to really think, okay, what do I learn from this? Where does this comment come from? And this is what we talked about before, that the positionality that people ascribe to me tells us something about the research topic. So to step back and to think, okay, he doesn't even know me personally, right? So his hostility is caused by what he sees in me, and then to think, okay, what does he see in me, and why is he hostile towards whatever he sees in me? So I think that's very helpful. And then also, as I said, it can be an emotional struggle. So in this regard, I found it very, very fruitful to talk about it with friends, with research participants who can take out a lot of the tension. And as I said, with the example of Ubed, that he was broadening my horizon and making me understand more about the situation. So I think with hostility, it can be harsh, but it's always good to keep in mind that we can learn something from it, that we need to see it as research data and not as a personal attack. And in some cases also to accept the limits. I think when some people, let's say here in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, do not want to talk to me, then I have to accept it, but I can also learn something from it. I understand that people live in mistrust, that people support boycott movements. So I have to accept this limit, and I can just learn as much from it. With regard to Judith's question about data, it's very interesting because I agree with what Melanie said. I think first, it's because people do not know one another personally. So if they would know the other students personally, maybe they would be more willing to share the data. But then I think it's also about the understanding of what data is. And that was what I was trying maybe to reflect about in my comment, that we talk a lot about positionality in the field, and then we forget to talk about positionality at the desk. Maybe we think, in the field, everything is so complex and emotional, and I have to find access to the field and build trust and gather data. And then maybe we have this idea of data as a black box, that we come and take this data from the field and then it's ours, which I think is a misleading, maybe that's the perception that the students have, that data is like something fixed. But then again, data is also not something fixed. It's also something fluid. And now I work more with people from the humanities, and their understanding of text also makes me reflect about data, that if we see data as text, text is also not objective. Text, the way we understand text also depends on the reader, on the recipient, and not only on the, let's say, the provider of this text or information. So maybe we need to work towards an understanding of data and text as something that can be understood from different angles. And I find tandem collaboration and cooperation in data analysis very fruitful. I also remember that in Freiburg, we would maybe bring a transcript of an interview to a colloquium, and it's so helpful when another person looks at it. So maybe I can share two things in the chat. So there is this Yayasan Sastra Lestari in Jakarta, which is a foundation for the analysis of Javanese texts. And as I said, like maybe people in the humanities, they are already a step further, because this Yayasan Sastra Lestari, it's a platform for cooperative text analysis of and also translations of Javanese texts, because it's also a lot of work to translate a text, and obviously there are different approaches and different translations. So that's something I find very inspiring. And the other one is that's a more commercial program, but that's a program that we used now at the Hebrew University in the pandemic. It's called Perusal, and it's a program where people can work at the same time on a text. So there is a PDF document, and then students can at the same time work at on this document. And I think this is some programs or projects that are very inspiring and that can provide ideas of how we could move towards collaborative data analysis. Yeah, and then ethnography, that's a very interesting question. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience myself with virtual ethnography, but I would assume that, again, there are positionalities and there are always factors that influence the positionality and that shape positionalities. I do think that in the internet, a new challenge is the question of fake news and hoax news, and also what are they called, these bots, that they are not real people, but they are Facebook or Instagram robots, and fake images, photographed installations. So all of this can, of course, create like fake images of gender or race, and maybe this could be used in a conscious way to trigger reactions. Yeah, but that's just a thought. I really don't have a lot of experience in the field of virtual ethnography.
Thank you very much. Apparently, we are running out of time, but it is 5 already in Indonesia. So I guess it is time for us to wrap up. And for that purpose, so we still have 2 agendas. First is the last agenda is for group photo. Yeah, so prepare yourself with a very enlightened pose, because we did fruitful discussion. But we will listen to concluding remark from Mbak Ita and Mbak Melanie, maybe what's so called as tandem concluding remark from this discussion. So maybe short remarks, short concluding remarks. Thank you. You are still muted, but
yeah, well, I keep it really short,
right.
probably first, as Ita still unmute.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's really important to highlight this multi-perspectivity when you go for research. Of course, it's not always possible, but in kind of a tandem or team model, but it should be one of the main things you think about, that you get feedback while you're doing research from as much as possible perspectives, because that's just how you can broaden and complement your research best. So maybe this one key conclusion from my side, and then terima kasih kepada semuanya. It was really, really fruitful, and I was really, really happy to have this inspiring input from all. So thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Ita.
Baik, Mas Rum. I will add briefly. So I would, especially for students or for those who will go to the field work, positionality with their very many shades are very crucial. It's important in social science research, in not only in Southeast Asia but also in anywhere, as it plays an important role in the process of obtaining data, and in a large measure determines the eventual success of the quality of the data. And as Mirjam already also put forward, it also determine the data analysis on the desk. So positionality, I think, should be reflected by each of individual researcher, because it influences a lot to the productions of knowledge. Thank you again, everyone. Mirjam, Melanie, Mas Rum, Bu Judith, and Prof. Stefan Seitz is also there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also hope for further collaborations after this then. Thank you. Selamat sore.
Thank you very much, Mbak Ita, and thank you very much for all of the speakers, Mbak Melanie, Mbak Mirjam, also Ibu Judith Slayer, Professor Stefan Seitz, and all of the participants. Now it is time for us to make a nice group photo. So please, participants, you can turn on your video, please, so we can make a group photo before we end the discussion.